As you may know, Amazon has millions of products in its catalog, and it can be overwhelming when someone types in a keyword, and how does Amazon know what results to show? What is relevant, what is not relevant? So what Amazon does is they take everything and they break it down into categories. And there's something like 30 some odd major top level categories, and then below each of those categories are subcategories. So you might have a category like sports and outdoors, for example. And under that is a subcategory called fitness. And under that's another subcategory called exercise rollers or something. And so you have all this, it's called a category tree or a hierarchy or nodes. Sometimes Amazon calls it nodes. And so that's how Amazon makes sure that when the customer types in a keyword, they only see things that are relevant to them. So the keyword here is relevancy. Everything on Amazon revolves around relevancy. So when you're creating your listing, and we'll get into this a little bit later in a different module, you've got to make sure that you have the keywords that are relevant to your product so that you can get categorized correctly by Amazon and be found by customers. Now, when you're choosing to sell on Amazon, you're going to have to pick the category and the subcategory that you go into. And this can make a huge difference in your sales if you pick the wrong category. So a lot of times what I like to do is actually use the X-ray tool and type in some of the keywords that are very relevant for my product that I think that people will be searching for and actually end up buying my product, and see what categories my competition's in. Sometimes you'll see they're all in the same category. Sometimes you'll see it might be between a couple different categories. And you're going to have to choose which category your product is most relevant for. And that choice can make a huge difference. And in some cases, when there's multiple categories shown, trying one category may not work as well for you as the other category. So I tend to look at what the guys that are most similar to me and doing the best sellers in that category and go with their category. Now, when you apply to sell on Amazon, you're going to have to choose the category. You actually define the category you're going to sell in. Some categories are gated, which means that you have to get approval to actually sell in that category. Some examples of that might be auto or jewelry or some hazardous goods. Toys during the fourth quarter are a gated category. They're not all year long, but during the fourth quarter they are. There's certain requirements. There's gourmet foods. There's quite a few that are actually gated categories. There should be down at the bottom here a link with a full list of which categories are gated and which ones are ungated. So if it's a gated category, you're going to have to get permission to actually sell there in that category. Some of those are easy to get permission on. Some of them are not so easy. So before you get into your product selection, you're going to need to know what category you're going into, or you're going to have an idea when you find a product, which category does this fit in, and can I get ungated in that category, or is it just wide open? Other categories are totally wide open. You don't have to have any advance approval to sell in them. Some of those include like sports, home and kitchen, garden and outdoors. For example, most of beauty, there's a few things in beauty that require approval. Now, some of the gated categories actually require you to pay a fee. And so I've never had to actually pay a fee for anything that I've been selling in, but there's some categories that actually Amazon requires you to actually pay a fee to get ungated. Now, what you can do if you want to sell, let's say, in automotive, which is a gated category, and that's the place you're going, there's a couple different ways you can actually try to get ungated. One is you can go into and try to sell someone else's product. So you can actually, one of the things that I've done is gone to like a wholesaler. You can find online wholesalers where you can buy 10 or 20 units of something. And Amazon usually requires a receipt, a wholesale invoice showing that 10 to 20 units. And so you can actually buy 10 to 20 units and actually say that you're going to sell those on Amazon. So you would have to go to a wholesaler, buy the 10 to 20 units. It doesn't mean you actually have to ship them in Amazon. You could just throw them away if you want to, or you could actually send them in if you want. But Amazon's going to require that you show an invoice, a real invoice, and you can't fake this. You need to show a real invoice from a real wholesaler in order to have that opened up. Another way is you could get something from your factory showing that you're buying 1,000 of these units, but that's a little bit more complicated sometimes for Amazon to give the approval. And some people are uncomfortable giving out their factory's information directly to Amazon. So I prefer to do the wholesale route and just pretend I'm going to sell something else that I'm really not going to sell and buy 10 units of it just to get the invoice. Now you got to be careful. There are companies that will offer to do this for you out there that will ungate you. Be careful using some of those companies. There's a couple maybe legit ones, but most of them are doing some things that could get you in trouble. So I would be careful with that. So once you've figured out the category you're going to have to figure out the subcategory. which is also, like I said, it's also called the node ID, and then you'll be able to list in that category. Now, some products are restricted on Amazon, so you have to be careful with certain products like hazardous goods. Certain products require like FDA approval, so some certain medical devices. Some things are illegal to sell on Amazon. Like you'll see, some, even though vaping is CBD, for example, is legal in a lot of states in the United States. You got to be careful with certain products there. You have to classify them a little bit differently than what they actually are. People will still find them. But some sexual wellness products are a little bit difficult. Pesticides is another one that could be a big problem. And a lot of people get hit with this one unexpectedly. Even selling something as simple as like a mosquito repellent that goes in the garden, a little stake or something that goes in the garden, that can be considered a pesticide. And you're like, this is not a pesticide. This is not, it's not a spray to kill bugs. It's a little piece of plastic with a repellent sound, but that's classified as a pesticide. So if you have something that's classified as a pesticide on Amazon, by Amazon's rules, you're going to have to do a pesticide training. And Amazon offers this, and it's take you about 20 minutes or so to go through it. You'll find it on Seller Central, and if you get flagged as this, they'll direct you to the right link. And you'll go through this training and have to answer some questions and pass a little test before Amazon will allow you to sell these pesticides. There's certain things that sometimes Amazon restricts from time to time. They're restricted categories. You'll put the listing up, and then within a day, it comes down saying this is restricted. You need special permission to sell this. A good example of this is during the pandemic, hand sanitizer and anything related to COVID. People were trying to sell it left and right, and Amazon was taking it down all the time. And Amazon was taking it down for the keywords that were in the listing or in the title. For example, back on the hand sanitizer thing, if you were selling wipes and you said these are disinfecting wipes, use them to clean your hands, disinfecting wipes, that would get flagged as a pesticide because the word disinfecting is actually a pesticide term according to Amazon. Because the way it works is that anything that cleans the skin is regulated by the FDA in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration. Anything that cleans a surface is regulated by the EPA, and so it's a pesticide. So if you say a wipe, you can use this wipe to wipe your hands or to clean your table, that'll get flagged as a restricted product on Amazon. And you'll have to go through some approvals and show that you're EPA registered and a whole bunch of other things. Even little lights that kill germs, that you put your phone in, those little boxes that you put your phone in, those can be considered a pesticide. So these are things that you got to keep in mind. And maybe as your first product, you want to try to steer clear of some of these little hassles and go with something a little bit more simpler that's not going to require all these additional levels of approval. So there's a full list down below of which categories require approval in advance and which ones don't. So take a look at that. And as you start going through the product sourcing modules in a little bit, keep those in mind. And try to steer yourself to something that's a little bit easier to do the first time around, and then go after some of these other categories later on if you so choose. We'll see you in the next module.